The New World Order.
Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Welcome to another live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole, ladies and gentlemen. It is Sunday, May 6th, 2012, and I have a jam-packed show for you today. First hour, I'm going to be going over the Ron Paul delegate strategy with a Ron Paul organizer from down here in South Florida. And second hour, I'm going to be having show regular himself, Winston Smith, back on to discuss Anonymous, the latest with the quote-unquote hack attacks by Iran, SCADA attacks, and the most interesting thing that I've seen, the new trailer for the new Call of Duty video game, which pretty much sets it up that hackers take over drones and are attacking troops and citizens. So we've discussed this, and Winston and I are going to be getting into it. All right, first hour, as I said, I want to talk about the Ron Paul delegate strategy. And to do that properly, I've brought on someone who's been on the show before. You all know him. Ron Paul organizer in Miami, Hector. Hector, welcome back.
Hey, thanks, Popeye. Just when you think it's all over, this race for the Republican nomination is wide open again.
Yeah, and the mainstream media is not talking about it because they want everybody to think that Romney's a sure thing and he's got it all sewn up. Let's get into it. This weekend was a really busy weekend for the Ron Paul campaign. We got a few minutes before we go to break, so the floor is all yours. Go ahead and tell everybody what exactly transpired this weekend for the Ron Paul campaign and what they won.
Nevada's having their state convention. Nevada and Maine are having their state conventions right now as we're talking. They're finishing up a marathon. In Nevada, Ron Paul delegates were basically able to take over the delegate slots for the RNC 22-3. In Maine, they're looking to sweep all of them. That's about 24 delegates. We've also seen a lot of dirty tricks out there from the Romney camp trying to basically throw confusion, costing in Nevada, for instance, 4 to 6 hours of delay. So, that did not go well with people. And everything's been captured on camera. Everything's well documented. There are people even arrested wearing Ron Paul shirts and fake convention badges. It's ridiculous. In other places, Iowa, had their delegate selection meeting, which elects their at-large delegates. Ron Paul swept 12 of 13 of those, and in Virginia there was a district convention that gave Ron Paul another 3 delegates and 3 alternates. Wow, that's very busy.
Now, the thing you were talking about with the fake Ron Paul shirts and stuff in Nevada, and they got caught and arrested, that's what you were telling me about before we came on air, right? That they went in there to kind of give out was it a fake ballot they were giving out, or fake delegate list or something? Yeah,
basically a delegate list to confuse people about who they should be voting for. And maybe they are thinking they'll get lucky enough to encourage people to vote for certain Romney people. Because basically the list was made up of some Ron Paul names that were misspelled purposely, and then a bunch of other names that were only known Romney delegates for the up for vote. The same thing happened in Maine, almost at the exact same time. There's no question that this is some type of well-organized strategy or ploy to confuse the whole thing and throw this into chaos.
Somebody needs to take this on. Somebody needs to expose this and not wait till 6 months from now to talk about it, because it won't be that big of a deal then. They need to do something, make a video about this now. People have the capability. Someone listening, do it.
Well, the good thing about this is that we've actually had 2 videos from both locations showing the faces, who these people are. Even iReport and CNN got the story and actually pushed it on their website, the one in Maine. So it's happening. People are starting to find out because we're active, we have the evidence, and we're going to keep pushing it on people until people realize. The problem is we have an RNC that's working hand in hand with the Romney campaign illegally. I mean, they're sharing revenue, they're sharing resources. They're doing what they can to make sure that their plan stays in motion. And that plan has nothing to do with Ron Paul.
Of course, because of who their masters are, what hands that they actually lick. And it's not, they don't believe in anything that Ron Paul believes in. And by the way, I think it's so telling that Bachmann and Gingrich and Santorum, all of a sudden they all come out. We support Romney. It's important that we beat Obama. Romney is the most conservative one there is. Now, they're all out of the race except for Dr. Paul. He's the only one. Right now it's a 2-man race. It's Dr. Paul and Mitt Romney. And they're just acting like Ron Paul's not in the race anymore and that he shouldn't even be bothering. When Romney draws 75 people to a gathering and Ron Paul will garner, 10,000 people at Berkeley, the liberal bastion of this country, and you're going to tell me that he could pull 10,000 people at Berkeley? Bet you Romney couldn't pull 10,000 people at Berkeley, and he's really a liberal.
Wait a minute, you didn't hear about what Obama did? Obama had his campaign launch party this past weekend, and barely 2,000 people showed up. It filled a quarter of a stadium. And the funny thing is, it's on the CNN news reporter points around and says there's more people behind him than in front of him. Wow, this place is pretty empty. They actually said that on live cable television.
That's awesome.
I mean, people are not excited about anything that's going on except Ron Paul.
Again, perfect example. What Hector just said, and then you look at Ron Paul being at Berkeley, the liberal, uber liberal haven, and he draws 10,000 people. Do you understand how the idea of freedom and, personal liberty, it stretches across quote unquote party lines? People are starting to wake up. Honestly, it's exciting. I wouldn't pick another time to ever live. Really, it's really exciting to see compared to 4 years ago. Remember how it was 4 years ago, Hector? Because you've been around for a long time, so you know what I'm talking about. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I want to give Hector a little credit here. He's one of the only activists that I know that I've met years ago when I first got into this, that, in like 2006, that he's still involved in this to this day. And he still pushes just as hard, if not harder, than he did when I met him all those years ago. And that's why I have him on the show, because I have a lot of respect for him. So thank you, Hector, for, staying true to your word, dude. I've known you for a while now, and you've always been on point, and you've always been true. Even when I remember being down at Occupy, going and checking out what they were doing in Occupy Miami, and you come out of nowhere and you're like, hey, Popeye, what's up? You know, it's good to see you out there trying to educate people. You hold classes, do you not, too?
We're trying to do a lot of things down here. I mean, classes, education. You know, I'll talk to individuals. I'll talk to groups. I mean, people just need to know what's going on, and people need to know what they're responsible for. I mean, ultimately, you know, all the struggles that you and I and everyone else that love liberty in this country and everywhere around the world, we have to fight. We have to learn what's going on, and this struggle is what makes us. This is the struggle that gives us identity, and ultimately that makes us value our lives even more.
I agree. I'm going to cut you off right there, Hector, because we're coming up to a break. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back. We are back. All right, Hector, I want to get into the delegate strategy of the Ron Paul campaign because not many people understand what's going on. The Paul campaign has done a good job of explaining, hey, you know, this is what we're doing, and the mainstream media ignores them, and they don't really have to elaborate. They can just continue on down their path, and it seems to be working. So let's give the listeners an idea of what exactly is the Ron Paul campaign's delegate strategy, and how the hell are they kicking as much butt as they are? Well,
you have to realize that the political parties in this country were founded, 100, 200 years ago in some instances. That means that they're governed by rules. They're based on a set of rules and principles that have nothing to do with democracy. It's all based on a Republican form of government. That means if you know the rules, you can come in and you can use them to change things. And that instead of waiting on elections to decide things, you can get a couple people together and explain things at conventions, whether local or state, and you can even get enough people to come in and simply overtake the mechanism of the process and take delegates. And that's essentially what Ron Paul's campaign is doing. They're going around the country and changing election outcomes according to the rules of how it's supposed to work. I mean, all these popular votes that you see, they're beauty contests, all of them, no matter what. And that's what the perception's about. The perception is they want you to pay attention to beauty instead of integrity and substance. So this is what the whole process is really coming down to. A group of committed people who are using the rules and gaming the process accordingly to make changes. That's what it's always been about. To make change, you need a small committed group of people in order to make things permanent. In this case, Ron Paul is going across the country, like in Iowa. You may have heard, it's a great example. Iowa, you may have heard there have been two different winners at first. First, you heard of Romney. Then, like 13 days later, it was Santorum. And now, 3 months later, it's Ron Paul. Ron Paul with the vast majority of coming out of Iowa with delegates. I don't think Romney's even going to get one. Maybe one. And that's the point. If you know the rules are set by those who govern. And if you don't know the rules and you don't live by them, then you are simply going to be used by them, by people who at least know how to use them. That's what life's about. That's what society's about. So in this case, it's not just a fight about ideas and principles. It's a fight for the very mechanism of the Republican Party. That's what's got the establishment Republicans and the establishment in general scared out of their mind. And that's why they're committing fraud, election fraud. They're really interfering with the process in ways that's never been seen before from the top down. Whether it's introducing conflict into state conventions, or saying they're going to unseat entire delegations if things don't go their way. I mean, that is the mark of what a despotic regime based on principles of democracy and demagoguery is. So let me repeat that. Like, for example, Nevada is a state that has a lot of Ron Paul support. It should have probably most likely have gone Ron Paul's way from the beginning, even with popular vote or with not in dispute. The RNC attorney council sent a letter to the Nevada GOP saying, if you guys change the outcome of the election by giving all your delegates over to Ron Paul, we will not seat you at the RNC convention in August. Unheard of. They're actually threatening a convention. Is that really even considered Let's see,
But
Democratic.
I'm glad it's coming to this. I'm glad it's coming to this because, see, in my eyes, even if, a lot of people say, Paul won't even get in, they're not going to give him the nomination. That's fine. The point is, it shows everybody that is a Republican that is asleep right now, and they're just getting on board because they're starting to understand things and they're starting to wake up, and they still think that things are fair and that there's a chance. They're going to wake up and realize, wow, the game is completely rigged. And then they're going to realize that we have to take a second look at how we're at things and how we're doing stuff. And that's when they start to dig a little deeper. You know how many people I know that I've met in the Ron Paul campaign, and just from going out to events and covering if they had events down here. And in the beginning, we'd go out and give them DVDs and stuff, and they'd be like, "Oh, you 9/11 truthers are crazy," and they would call us names. And now I know people that are, they're beyond, 10 miles beyond where they were a few years ago. And I've had people say, back when I first met you guys, I thought you were crazy, but man, this stuff is, real. This is really going on, blah, 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 blah. And they get it now. So I think the idea of people getting involved in this, it's a way, everybody has a key to their awakening, whether it be politics, economics, they like conspiracy, paranormal type stuff, whatever. Something, everybody has that key that awakens them. And if the Ron Paul campaign is nothing more than this huge beacon of truth in the sea of bullshit, okay, then, and I'm not saying he's a perfect guy. He's a 76-year-old OBGYN, okay? I'm not saying he's God or has a cape and he's Superman. I realize he's a human being, okay? I don't think that he's Zeus or anything of the like. But I know for a fact that his message and the idea of what he talks about and what he believes in resonates with people. And it resonates with young people. And that's very important because you could lose an entire country in a few generations. It can go from freedom to tyranny. Right? Jefferson talked about that. You only need, and so did Adams and everybody else, all the founding fathers. They knew this. This is why they had the discussions, and the Constitution was put together the way it was, and they fought so hard for certain things because they knew that down the road things were going to get bad again. You don't think that I can't stand when people in this country think that the founding fathers didn't think that this was going to happen. Well, of course, they didn't think they would have remote-controlled drones, Popeye, because we didn't have drones back then. Okay, minus the technology, the idea of tyranny is still the same, okay? The idea of kicking in your front door and having troops come in your front door and check things out. Does it really matter if they have a machine gun or a musket? Doesn't really matter, does it? The point is, you have troops kicking in your door and violating your liberties. And I think the one thing his campaign does is it sparks that fire of liberty in the younger generation that right now they're so brainwashed by mass media and TV and Lady Gaga and all this other crap that this is like one of the first times that they can actually look at a politician, because a lot of these young kids don't have any respect for politicians except for the Obama stuff. And a lot of these kids that thought he was going to be different realize that he's not different. I mean, there are people that are brainwashed, but I see that the younger generation is waking faster than the 30 and 40 and maybe even 50-year-olds. A lot of people that are in the older generation, it's almost like they're stuck, Hector. They don't want to admit that the Obama campaign and the Obama hope and change myth is just that. It's a myth. I have friends that are living in denial. I mean, they're smart, super smart people. One of my closest friends, super smart guy, and he refuses to. He's like, "What has Obama done that's wrong?" He's like, "I think he's been a great president." And I'm like, "Dude, are you on the same planet as I am? Like, do you exist on Earth? Or are you in some alternate reality that I don't know about?" You know what I mean? So, all right, break coming up. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. More with Hector when we come back. Don't go anywhere. So, Hector, you wrote a pretty good article, actually. I posted it on Federal Jack the other day over on the Daily Paul. And it pretty much craps all over the Romney campaign. You expose all the lies that they've been, pushing out, that, to get the whole presumptive nominee thing. and he's got these delegate numbers and this and that. So go ahead and break it down, just like you did in the article, I guess, piece by piece, and tell everybody what you exposed and what you found out.
Sure, Popeye. But real quick, first, I wanted to report that Maine is wrapping up their convention. They're in recess right now. And the comments from people over there say the Romney people have mostly left. This is Ron's house now. We took the GOP sacred cow and slaughtered it. We've taken everything. It's a massacre. If everything holds up, it'll be a tremendous embarrassment for Romney. So, I mean, getting involved, knowing the rules, that is what scares the establishment most of all. And and that's just truth. That's just talking truth to power. And what I wrote in the Daily Paul was an article titled 7 Secrets Destroying the Candidacy of Mitt Romney that the RNC does not want you to know. Essentially, the first item I talk there is about Romney's inflated delegate numbers. And basically, the media have, and for the most part, those state GOPs have inflated this process, thinking that just because you win a popular vote means that you win all of the state's delegates. This is far from the truth in most cases. Not all of the states, a grand majority of the states are not winner take all. That means there's a process in the states and local county levels or congressional district levels that vote on, have a say in how or who those delegates are and who they'll support. In this case, when I broke this down about a week ago, there's 14 remaining states. 14 remaining states that have yet to vote. That includes the 2 biggest states in this country, which is Texas and California, which have, and then another 30 state conventions. About 3 have already taken place since then. But together, those 16 states and another 30 state conventions have more than 1,900 delegates unallocated. You know what that's like? There's only 2,286 delegates in total. That's nearly 83% of all delegates have yet to be allocated toward anybody. So how can they say that there's a presumptive nominee? Well, because that's what they've been told, and that's what they're going to pass along. And I'm talking about the media. I'm talking about the RNC. I'm talking about the state convention. There is whoever pays the most money these days is supposedly who runs things, right? But that's not the case. This is a republic. You can't just buy the votes. In fact,
no, not if people actually get out and get involved and get angry.
Exactly, that's the point. People, when they're actually involved and they care, they will resist.
I look forward to the next step when people realize that government control is actually irrelevant. And when people say, "Well, without government, who would fix the roads?" Well, who says that with the government? If we didn't have government, that we'd even need the roads? We'd be in flying cars flying around.
You're absolutely right, Popeye. The name of the game being played is perception. The Romney campaign has to maintain this perception of its inevitability, or else they're going to lose delegates from that supposed magic number they have. And they'll encourage people to resist them in the next coming contest and state conventions across the country. And the RNC, on top of that, has to also prove its legitimacy, because all these organizations, from Romney to the RNC to Obama to DC, the swamp, have to prove their legitimacy to us. It's not they got nothing on us. They can't force us to do anything. It's all a matter of perception, and if you have to decide whether you're going to go along with what they say or not. And that brings me to my next point that I wrote in my article. RNC Rule 38. What's Rule 38? Delegates can vote their conscience. They're not bound to state rules saying they're bound to vote for somebody. Yes, I just said it. There's no such thing as a bound delegate. Now, you may never hear this on Fox News, CNN, or MSNBC, but it's absolutely true. There is no such thing as a bound delegate. That means whatever delegates are floating around out there do not have to vote for Romney. And this is the big problem. That's why perception matters. In this case, the Ron Paul strategy of competing for each and every delegate, especially in states where Romney's won and they're sort of considered winner take all, is even more important. because all of a sudden Romney is going to be stuck with delegates that are supposedly bound, that are really Ron Paul supporters and have absolutely no obligation to vote for Romney at the RNC nominating convention. So what this throws everything that's been said for months now out the window. Ultimately, like I was saying, I mean, this is huge. I don't know, Popeye, this is huge news. You gotta feel you gotta feel tingling sensation on your skin when you hear this. There are no such things as bound delegates, and most of the delegates that are being won these days are Ron Paul supporters that are not going to vote for Romney. So, will anybody actually ever get a majority of the delegations to become the Republican nominee? Probably not. And that's where it's going to be a floor fight for the nomination. So how does this work? Well, when you get to these conventions, there's one thing that matters overall. Even if the state GOP has special rules, even if the RNC threatens people, it all depends on what the people of those conventions decide. This is how the rules work. In these convention meetings, only the meetings themselves dictate what rules they'll follow. Let's put it this way in an individual concept. You can't make me do anything I don't want to do. And the meetings, and all these meetings, whether they're local or state meetings, it's absolutely holds true. So if the state GOP rules say that such and such a number of delegates go to Romney, but then they go to the state convention, that state convention meeting can throw out those entire rules and give the whole thing to Ron Paul. And that's what happened in Iowa. And that's what was very close to happening in Nevada. And that was very close to happening in Alaska. And in Maine, that did happen today. So it is absolutely imperative that people understand the rules and take advantage of them, or they'll be taken advantage by people who do know them. So that's an inherent in the understanding of something called Robert's Rules. All of these meetings are governed by a set of rules that were established more than 100 years ago, called Robert's Rules of Order. And that's what people cringe. When you enter these meetings and you talk about Robert's Rules, they'll cringe because that's what gives you the power to stop the meeting, interrupt it, and gain the floor to speak your mind. I mean, it's just like the U.S. Senate. You can filibuster all you want. That's why the Nevada convention went till 1 a.m. last night in West Coast time.
Yeah, if people aren't aware of their power, they won't exercise it. That's why, again, I look forward to the day when people realize what government actually is. You know, the term government. It's two Latin words put together, and it literally means the control of the mind. So, you know, one day people are going to realize that you don't need a nanny to tell you what to do. You don't, oh, protect me. The government can't protect you. That's a fallacy. It's the biggest fallacy ever. And people that buy into it are just completely pathetic. And a lot of people have been neutered. This country's been neutered. But again, that's why it's inspiring to see people taking back the idea of liberty, because with this idea, and again, that's why I like the fact that people take things away, even if, Paul didn't win, didn't become president, whatever. Okay, and if he did, I don't think that he would land on the lawn of the White House in January and poof, everything would stop and everything would be hunky dory. The point is, it's causing people are taking things away, from his campaign and what his speeches and stuff. It's causing people to take a second look at things and realize their individual liberty, their true power. And I think once people start on that path, and they start realizing, what real freedom is and stuff, and they start reading things, even once they get past Jefferson and they actually start reading, like, what's his name, Lysander Spooner and stuff like that, and they start doing more research and going further down, the rabbit hole, as it were. I think once you're on that path, it's really hard to turn around. You know what I mean? It's like once you realize what's up with 9/11 and other things, you can't just turn around and say, oh, well, I'm going to go back to watching Dancing with the Stars. It's really hard to do that. So I'm glad that people are waking up because of this and being sent on their own paths of enlightenment. All right, we're going to break. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a few minutes. Don't go anywhere. We are back. Final segment. Hector and I were talking during the break, and I said something, and he was like, man, you got to say that on air. So I'll repeat it on air. You know the establishment is evil when they fear a 76-year-old OBGYN.
That's right, Popeye. That's right. I mean, the RNC and Romney and the entire political establishment, they've had this plan of continuing to rob us of our humanity, rob us blind of everything else that we find of value. But you know what? Like Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And I'm telling you, this past weekend and the weekend before that, Iowa, Nevada, Maine, Alaska, you name it, Louisiana, all these contests are punches in the face of the establishment, and they don't know what to do. They're trying everything now.
That's why they're panicking. That's why you have them putting things like the NDAA and all this other stuff, all these executive orders that he passes. Apparently, he just signed one this past weekend that I guess basically if a foreign treaty says, take their guns or whatever, then we have to acquiesce and give up our weapons and stuff, as per the president.
I mean, Rand Paul was complaining about Interpol having jurisdiction within the boundaries of the United States, that international arrest warrants can be issued and essentially be listened to and obeyed to in this country. I mean, it's unheard of. I mean, to give up that much sovereignty. But this country is going through troubles right now, but we have a chance to change it. We have a chance to change the course of this nation.
We're in a bad relationship. Okay, look at it that way. We're in an abusive relationship. The government right now, this elite cabal that controls it, they're like a drunken, abusive husband, and you have the country, the citizens, which is like the wife. And we're getting smacked around, and we're just sitting there taking it. And then after they smack us around and beat the crap out of it, I only hit you, baby, because I love you. That's the we need the police state for your protection. I only hit you, baby, because I love you. That's what that is. And then we go, okay, I love you too. And we don't do anything. What we need to do is like that movie Enough with Jennifer Lopez, where she learns how to kick ass. And then when the government, the abusive husband comes back, you whoop some ass and handle business. And then if any of these outsider Illuminatist douchebags out in the, bankers in the other part of the world, well, we must send in the UN, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, bring it. Because once we get unified as a country, people aren't going to want to mess with us, okay? They're not going to invade. You're not going to have some foreign country itching to invade. You're going to have the bankers, whoever's left, trying it. And once we get the country back, why don't we turn this thing around? We can spread that to other countries. Other countries would get inspired by it. I'm telling you, it'd be really awesome if we could have Hang a Banker Day globally. You know what I'm saying? Put live streams up on Ustream.
Hey, Popeye, we just need to bring back the old tradition of tarring and feathering people.
Dude, I'm going to tell you what. You hang 100 of these elitist guys, these social engineers, these pedophiles, these perverts, these evil pricks. You hang 100 of them live on television, and you leave them hanging there with signs around their neck that says traitor, pedophile, whatever. And while they're hanging there, okay, you just leave a live video feed for days on the internet. Okay? You know what would happen? A lot of this crap would stop because they would realize that people have had enough. If the military and police, you know how you stop the wars? Don't partake. You know how you stop the martial law takeover? Don't partake. If they try to bring in foreign troops, you defend your country and you defend your citizens. You stand up for your family and you stand up for what's right. Stop being afraid. That's the biggest thing. Everybody's so afraid, Hector. Oh, we fear. And again, I think that's one thing that people are, we discussed this during the break. People are starting to find that inner courage, from whatever. Again, everybody has that key to awaken. And once that door is opened, it's like they realize that there is nothing to fear and that we need to take this head on and take care of things. I always say David Rockefeller, I know the guy's evil, but why are we so afraid of him? He needs big, burly bodyguards to protect him, okay? Well, but he's got money, Popeye, but he's not scary. Maybe his bodyguards are, but they can be taken out. Trust me, we have a lot scarier people on our side, okay? We really do. And second of all, look at him. He looks like Schmeagol from Lord of the Rings. Why are we afraid of that little thing that walked around going, my precious? Why are you afraid of that? And I think by standing up to the establishment, you know, even by getting involved for some of these 18, 19-year-old kids, Hector, where they're, for the first time, they're like, you know, wow, you know, somebody understands, you know, I like this guy's message. He's not, you know, he's not pushing us for war. I'm tired of seeing my friends, you know, come home in a box. And I think that really resonates with a lot of people. And then again, they go down that path. And then as they go down that path, they find that inner courage to continue on. And a lot of them start to research 9/11, you know, the New World Order, all of this stuff. And they realize that this is much bigger. And even Ron Paul, he's talked about false flag operations and stuff before. See, I respect the fact, I understand why he doesn't. Everybody says, why doesn't he go off on 9/11 and stuff more? Because he's smart. Because right now, he knows that maybe, you know, you gotta think, he's a pretty smart guy. He's probably sat down and figured that right now people aren't ready to hear a politician say that. Okay, and that would just help the establishment get him away and marginalize him. Whereas if he can do what he's doing and get in, he knows about false flag operations. Who's to say that if you petitioned the White House and said to him, you know, are you down for a new investigation? He said that he would, you know, be down for a new investigation and look into it. He's smart with how he chooses his words. I don't blame him. Because in order to be able to have people take you seriously enough right now, because of the mentality of the people, you have to look at it, you know, of what you're dealing with and who you're dealing with. So I don't blame him or fault him for that. And I'm not, you know, blowing smoke up his ass either. I don't think Ron Paul's perfect, but I think, again, the ideas that he stands for are more powerful. And right now there's nobody else talking about this kind of stuff. And I got to tell you, it really is encouraging to see the youth taking to freedom and liberty, because right now you get so many kids that don't even know what liberty is. You ask them about a historical event, and you're lucky if they even know when 9/11 happened. You say, hey, man, when did September 11th happen? And they would go, oh, man, I don't know, October of 2006? You know, like, they're just, there's a lot of the youth that are out of touch because of the dumbing down, you know, the non-education going on in school, just the indoctrination. And I think it's good. It's inspiring to see the future leaders of this society, the future people that are going to influence how society goes in the future. A lot of them are understanding about freedom and liberty. And I think that's one of the things that's pissing off the establishment. Because remember, they need, you know, again, I think it was Jefferson. He said about it was either Jefferson or Adams. One of them, they made the comment about, you know, freedom and tyranny is only like a generation apart, basically. And if you can indoctrinate the children to not really understand what true freedom is, then, you know, it won't be a thing to them when they lose it, because they won't really have understood what it was to begin with. So it is inspiring. We got a last few minutes. You want to plug anything, Hector?
Yeah, I think it's important that that you realize that you can still get involved. The Ron Paul campaign has opened up their phone banks that you can go to a phone.ronpaul2012.com, and you can still make calls in Texas, California, any state. There's three election contests coming up this coming week: West Virginia, North Carolina, and Indiana. And, you know, the campaign from Ron Paul to each of his advisors has said that something big is going to come from this weekend. But every little bit that, if you want to help to get involved, that would be the place to do it. Also, just get educated. You know, people don't like Romney, not because he's a Mormon, not because, you know, he's simply because he's not just a flip-flopper, but because of what he represents. You know, he represents something that is the political chameleon, and someone very closely tied to organized bank theft. You know, the bankers' theft. I mean, you're going to hear it here, because not too many people are talking about it, but there's a coming PR disaster for Romney coming up, and that is that his family invested money with and made money from a $8.5 billion Ponzi scheme run by Alan Sanford. I mean, they made money off a Ponzi scheme that hundreds of thousands of people were invested in and lost big on. I mean, that's bigger than Bernie Madoff. I mean, this is the kind of elections that we're looking at because people aren't involved. We're not holding people accountable at the low level. So people are working their way up and higher in places of government until they get the position where it's, hey, you know what? Maybe I can run the country. You know what? We have to hold our elected representatives accountable. Or you know what? You be the elected representative if you know better. But something's got to give. And it's either going to be us or it's going to be them. So it's up to you to decide. You know, you can get involved with Ron Paul's campaign, ronpaul2012.com. If you want to read more about what's going on, you can certainly look up my my writings on Daily Paul. My handle's Hector in Miami. And you know, Popeye, it's telling in this times that when you have us on, when you have someone like me on, that I'm the guy that has to tell the truth about everything. You don't hear it from other places. And that's, you know, I'm the only one that my family can turn to for news, real news. They tell me, is this good? Is that good?
See, that's what everybody needs to do. Hector, I got to cut you off because we're running out of time. We're going to break. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks,
Ladies
Popeye.
and gentlemen, get involved. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on this live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. It is Sunday, May 6th, 2012. And as promised, I have brought back to the show for hour number 2 my good friend and show regular, white hat hacker, Winston Smith. Winston, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on again.
You actually blew my mind today when you told me about this Call of Duty thing. Everybody's been telling me to watch this trailer, but they really didn't get into it. They just said, oh, Popeye, you need to see this. And then you sent me the link and said, dude, seriously, you need to watch this, and we need to talk about this. And when I watched it, I about fell out of my chair. So we're going to get into that in a little bit, because that all dovetails into what we're talking about. But let's get into what you and I warned of a couple months ago. False flag hack attacks. Now, you warned about the SCADA system attacks that they would launch. When I say they, I mean this, you know, whatever you want to call them, this elitist group that control things. They would either have contractors do it or the government itself, an agency in the government itself do it. And then they could blame Anonymous, or they could blame, you know, a foreign country, whatever. In this case, a couple months ago, it looked like they would have blamed Anonymous. Now it looks like they're aiming that weapon of mass deception at Iran. And you see them talking about how, Iran could, hack our infrastructure and take down power stations and everything else. So you know better than me about infrastructure and how that's such crap. So go ahead, I'll give you the floor. Explain to the listeners how that whole thing with the attacking Iran thing is crap, and go ahead and you can gloat if you want that you called it and said that they were going to try this.
They're basically following the playbook that they've laid out that we discussed on the last couple times I was on. They're gearing up to do a false flag attack against the SCADA systems in the United States. And for new listeners, SCADA systems are the automated controllers that are in charge of things like the water system, nuclear power plants, electrical grids, the critical infrastructure. And a lot of the technology is 20, 30 years old, and it shouldn't be put on the internet. But a lot of it, a lot of stuff that they have been updated has been put online. Some of the attacks that are coming through that are being developed now are against these old systems in order to attack critical infrastructure. And the only real motivation that a hacker would want to take over these systems for is to do some kind of damage to the infrastructure. And the only people who would really benefit from that are either foreign countries that are seeking to attack, or from the government itself that's seeking to do some kind of false flag attack. And that seems to be where they're going. We using groups like Anonymous as a proxy or as a front. They're seeking to do attacks on the United States and blame it on countries like Iran. And you can see in the recent news reports that that's exactly where they're heading. They can dovetail Anonymous into the mix by saying Anonymous was assisting topple regimes during the Arab Spring and all that stuff, and those are the Anonymous' participation in the Arab Spring revolution has been confirmed a State Department false flag operation. There are chat logs on Facebook that reveal basically admissions of such, and that seems to be where it's heading now. And what you can start to see in mainstream news reports that the government is warning of attacks against critical infrastructure, specifically on the SCADA systems from rogue enemies such as Iran or terrorist groups like Al Qaeda seeking to attack critical infrastructure by attacking our SCADA systems. And that basically just means they're starting to war game these scenarios and to develop attacks themselves. And then once they will pull something major, they're going to use that to pass legislation and restrict the internet even further.
And this right on the heels of CISPA. And you know what really gets me is nobody is in an uproar about CISPA like they were over SOPA. And everybody and their mother was, oh, SOPA's bad, putting out videos on the internet and funding the creation of videos and everything else. But CISPA, it's going through with just a whisper, and there's barely any, anybody standing up and saying, hey, stop, check this out, look what they're trying to do. I mean, to some people's credit, there are, but nowhere near the spotlight that SOPA had. Do you have any insider info as to why? Do you know why that is, or is that just because people are stupid?
It seems to me that they're the SOPA system just seems to be kind of a 1-2 punch where they introduce real abrasive legislation that everyone rejects, and then they'll be able to pass something that goes down a little smoother, but essentially has the exact same effects. And what I've noticed within the tech journalist, the tech journalist scene, a lot of the mainstream media outlets like Wired magazine that were real vocal against SOPA released several articles criticizing critics of CISPA, saying that CISPA isn't as bad as it's made out to be, and they have an article out called "CISPA Isn't the Son of SOPA." And that's basically an article downplaying the dangers of CISPA. And you can see similar articles like that from various mainstream media outlets across the board. That Wired magazine article is just the one that stood out. And it seems like their mainstream media that's controlled the control seems to be softening the reporting of CISPA so that it'll kind of sail through with a little fanfare. And it seems like the one major thing they need to get these restrictive legislations passed is some kind of internet, like some kind of catalyst online that will get people behind it, just like the Project for New American Century said they need a new Pearl Harbor in order to go into the Middle East, and they engineered 9/11. In order to pass this, but they're going to need some kind of internet Pearl Harbor, and they're working on doing that with the SCADA attacks.
And it looks like they're going to try to pinpoint it on Iran so they could get a 1-2 punch. That would, knowing them, because they never do things, on just to benefit on one level. If anybody wonders why they would blame Iran, well, it's a 1-2 punch. One, they can bring in this legislation to quote unquote protect the internet, because it's always about our protection. And they can declare war on Iran.
An act of war.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'd be able to dub this cyber offensive as an act of war.
The Pentagon already said they would react to a cyber attack with real bombs. So what do you think? They're just letting everybody know very slowly what they're going to do. Yes, that's exactly right. That's where they're going with it, and it's becoming more and more apparent as time goes on through mainstream media press releases, because there's more and more coverage on things like the scary Arab countries or scary Persian countries attacking our critical infrastructure using SCADA vulnerabilities and things like Anonymous, working to either topple or prop up regimes in the area when it's all just being puppeted from a blue State Department. What do you guys, the hacker community, think about all this? What's the chatter?
Among the right among the people who know what's going on and are informed about the New World Order and the big picture, the chatter is that it's pretty much, everyone pretty much agrees that this is where they're going with it, and everyone's kind of has their eyes open for it. And there's a lot of people who are completely blind to it within the hacker community, and that's just saying it's conspiracy theory, just like any group of people. And then you have those who are probably working to orchestrate it with DC people. And I'm sure those are among the people saying it doesn't exist as well.
Yeah, usually the ones that are going to perpetrate something are there as what we call shills. You know them. They're the ones that say, oh, there's nothing to this or anything. But there are people that are just plain ignorant to the facts. And that's bad because we need people to pay attention. We've discussed this before, how the hacker community is going to be what can prevent that if they can keep their eyes open. All right, ladies and gentlemen, first break coming up. Don't go anywhere. More with Winston Smith when we come back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. So, Winston, this whole Call of Duty thing, you alerted me to this. I'm going to play the audio from it. But before I play the audio from the video, and I'll put the link to the video in the chat for the listeners, and anybody listening on the YouTube, you can just look in the description, and I'll put a link to it so you guys can check it out. But kind of frame it for the listeners a little bit, and kind of give them, in like 30 seconds, tell them what it's about, and then I'll play the audio so they can get an idea.
Well, the new Call of Duty video game being released by Activision has a trailer that's been released onto YouTube, and the trailer stars Oliver North, as well as a couple game developers and a Special Forces major. And they're discussing the Call of Duty Black Ops 2 game that's about to be released, specifically Chapter 4 of the game, where it's called The Enemy. The chapter of that game is entitled The Enemy Has the Keys. And the trailer of the game features Oliver North discussing at length his nightmare scenario of a group of hackers being able to commandeer and take over the command and control center for drones, and being able to use the drones against American troops and civilian populations. And they say things like, if you can hack a bank, you can hack a drone. And as they're saying these things, they're showing images of Guy Fawkes masks and anonymous imagery and icons, using indicating that is where Anonymous is going to be going with their next attacks. And there's been an outcry from Anonymous against Activision, and they're threatening attacks against Activision now because of the light that they're portraying them. And that's where that's going. So go ahead and play the audio of Oliver North giving the rundown. Of course, everyone knows Oliver North is the coke dealer from the Iran-Contra scandal.
Good old Ollie. I don't know what you're talking about, as his secretary is shredding paperwork behind him. Right. Good old Ollie, coke dealer North. Here you go. Good frame up, by the way, Winston. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen.
You want to know what the war of the future is going to look like?
I don't think the average American grasps how violent war is about to become.
The next few years are going to
They show a rail gun.
see a wide array of technology that allows you to blow things up.
PW Singer, quote-unquote future war expert and author, Wired for War. He's been featured on the History Channel show about, I can't remember, I think it's called, That's Incredible or That's Impossible or something. It only ran for one season and they axed it, but interesting that he's in this. And it's all, I see what you mean, Winston, dramatic lighting effects and everything else. Ugh, mind control.
To kill in a way we've never seen before in history. A lot of these will sound like things out of science fiction. Things like directed energy, which is basically lasers made real.
Oh, directed energy weapons. Oh, like scalar technology too? Oh, like HARP. By the way, Joe Joseph and Tim Watts will be discussing HARP from 7 to 9, so make sure you stay tuned in. All right, I'm going to get back and let the rest of it play and stop interrupting it.
Exoskeletons, camouflage thought of an entirely new way. They're getting smarter. The weapon itself is becoming more independent. What happens next?
There's going to come a time when this technology is going to catch up with us. I have a nightmare scenario that a hacker breaks into our system that controls satellites, UAVs, even the launch of missiles. Consider what it would be like to have friendly fire from U.S. weapons overhead.
That was complete predictive programming, by the way.
The disconnect between how fast
I'll explain that in a minute.
technology is coming and our reaction time, the distance between those two is growing. Some of the most advanced technologies are not just going to be in the hands of the big boys anymore. What if terrorists could get their hands on this?
There is no longer a defined battle space. The enemy could be anywhere, and it could be anyone. I don't worry about a guy that wants to hijack a plane.
Wow, that was complete. I have to stop it there because it's right at the end. Wow, that was complete. Holy crap, right at the end. It could be anyone, and it flashes to that picture of from Anonymous they use in their videos where it's the Anonymous mask, and the person, whoever is wearing the mask, is wearing a hoodie. And it hesitates on that picture for a second as it says anyone, and then for a couple seconds afterwards. That is complete predictive programming. And what I said about him going, imagine drones, friendly fire here inside the United States. Yeah, that's them letting you know that they are going to use this technology against us. 30,000 drones in the next 5 years in the skies. Okay? Yeah, that's awesome. What say you, Winston?
Yeah, it's another example of how they're just flaunting it in everyone's face and preparing people so that once it does go down, nobody's surprised. Because I think one of the things that we explained earlier when one of the main reasons they haven't pulled off a big SCADA attack is because the average American will be like, well, what's an anonymous? What is this? They know what hackers are, but not everybody knows what anonymous is, and putting it in things like video games that everyone's kid plays, that's a way to force it into the mainstream culture even more than it is, because the mainstream media coverage hasn't been enough. So now they need to iconify things into the public consciousness, and by putting it into blockbuster video games that everyone's going to be playing and everyone's going to be buying for Christmas gifts and giving to their kids. That's going to instill the right mindset for people, so that once they do pull the big attack, everyone was ready for it and is expecting it and will follow the leader from there on out.
Yeah, and you'll hear people say, "Oh my God, it's like a video game."
It's just like a video game, yeah. Just like 9/11 was just like a Hollywood movie.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That was said multiple times. I remember even saying it myself. Wow, man. This whole thing it looks like it was pulled off with Hollywood-style precision, and then you find out later on it was pulled off with Hollywood-style precision, and it's pretty hard for a 6'6" Arab on dialysis in a cave to pull that off by himself with his laptop and his satellite phone, but apparently he did.
Just like it's going to be pretty hard for a bunch of 14-year-old kids sitting in college dorms to do what they're alleging is going to be done with Anonymous.
Yeah, and some poor super smart kid over at MIT or something will end up taking the fall, and they'll say, "Oh, he was sympathetic to Iran," and then they'll tie it to Iran and 9/11, and the next thing you know, we'll be carpet bombing Tehran. That's what they want.
And the proxy servers that hackers are bouncing out of. That's another thing.
That'll be in Russia, so we'll have to bomb Russia over that.
Yeah. So and that's a serious consideration though. People are asking like, oh, well, how do you stop hack attacks? Hackers are using proxies and so on and so forth, and bulletproof servers, and the ISPs that are protected by corrupt governments. So how do we deal with that? And the military response is, well, you find out the location of the data center and you bomb it.
Yeah, and as we all know, a lot of these proxy servers are in Russia, so that would just be another thing that they could use to start World War III right there. Yeah, Russia, we had to bomb your stuff because terrorists were, and
China as well.
Yeah, and by the way, you do realize that Russia just told NATO that they would preemptively strike their missile defense shield? The ones that are close to
that was
in Europe, they said that that violates that. I got to give Russia credit. They used Bush's words against the United States. It violates our national security, so we will preemptively strike to keep our national security, keep the country secure, I should say. And that's tell me that's not right out of the neocon playbook for Iraq. And this is Russia telling NATO this. This isn't a joke. And then here you have, like Winston just said, they could go try to hit the server centers. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break. Stay tuned. All right, ladies and gentlemen, every time Winston's on, I always have him give me the latest update from the hackerverse, as I call it, and what's going on with Anonymous. Because I'd like to at least get the listeners some sense of reality as to what's going on. Because the mainstream media is constantly going to blame Anonymous as this horrible, horrific entity that goes around doing bad things. Like, I laugh when they freak out. The CIA's website was taken down. Yeah, due to a DDoS attack. The CIA's website, CIA.gov. Do you really think they have national security secrets on CIA.gov? If you do, you need to stop drinking the Kool-Aid right now because it has completely affected you. 150%. There is nothing of value on CIA.gov. Okay? Nothing. It's a bigger tragedy if the E! Entertainment News Network got taken down due to a DDoS attack. And that's how useless CIA.gov is when it comes to national security issues. Same thing with FBI.gov. Those are just informational sites. And they play this up so that Anonymous looks like, some boogeyman, which, like Winston said, they'll just use to blame. So what's the newest news from the hackerverse, Winston? Uh-oh. Hope I didn't lose Winston.
Sorry, I was muted up.
That's okay. You back?
There are a couple. Yeah.
All right, cool.
There are a couple things that are going.
Who's in the hackerverse?
The main thing is that Anonymous is going after Activision because of the latest Call of Duty trailer. They're definitely going they're definitely going after Activision because they don't like being portrayed as terrorists. And it looks like they're putting together some kind of a DDoS campaign against Activision. It hasn't officially been launched yet, but there is chatter. There's chatter going on about it, and there's also a lot of integration with Anonymous and the U.S. State Department. It's not really officially admitted. But when there are a bunch of chat logs on Payspin from the AnonOps IRC network that discuss different informant groups like Backtrace Security and a few others and there's discussions between what appear to be FBI agents and State Department officials discussing networks of informants on Anonymous, and they're aside from those campaigns, a lot of the campaigns that they're coming out with are pretty much just fakes being put out by these provocateurs. Like they recently had Operation Global Blackout, which was supposedly going to attack the DNS servers of the internet, and that turned to be absolutely nothing. And they're mostly just kind of running from the feds right now. The feds, the FBI, and the Department of Justice have gotten more indictments and is starting to move a lot of the arrests into the plea bargain phase before they headed to trial. So the original group is kind of they're kind of in shambles right now. One of the people charged from Ohio is pleading not guilty in the attacks, but a lot of people are also pleading out, and those are pretty much the latest updates. And they also
so who's left doing all these AnonOps then? Is half of that is fake, and then but I know AnonOps itself that's the real board, right? The message board.
Right. But anyone can join. So like anyone can sign on to there and start a campaign up. And a lot of the most recent campaigns that have been getting a lot of press attention have been fakes. Some of the real stuff that's been going on, you have the Russian anonymous hacking groups. They're starting to target the Putin inauguration. As of 2 days ago, they began to target Russian government websites and Vladimir Putin. And I don't know if those are actual Russians who are members of Anonymous. The media is saying that they're Russian activists, but Russian hackers don't usually attack Russian websites. It's kind of just part of their culture that they don't do that. They usually only attack foreign websites, a lot like Chinese hackers. So it's most likely Anons who are either sympathetic towards the Russian people, or this is another State Department false flag where they're going after Russian intelligence services and branding it as anonymous. And that sounds more like it. So that seems to be going on there.
And that happens a lot, right? Where the State Department's going, doing these false flag attacks, and it's really the State Department doing it.
Yeah, it happened all through the Arab Spring, and now if you go to Google News right now and type anonymous hacker, the top 2 stories are the quote unquote Russian anonymous groups targeting Russian government websites of Vladimir Putin, which on the surface looks very much like a false flag from our side, because Russian hackers do not attack Russian websites. That's why they're able to operate the way they operate, because they know it's a hands-off type deal. They won't get bothered if they follow the rules. And the second link is a hacker from Anonymous is claiming to have leaked the VMware ESX hypervisor source code, which is a virtualization engine, and the source code for it was obtained off a Chinese military contractor's computer, because that's another campaign that Anonymous has been going on the last few weeks. A guy named Hardcore Charlie has been attacking Chinese military contractors and leaking all their passwords and data. And again, who benefits from attacking Chinese servers? And Anonymous is going after attacking Arab governments, Persian governments, Russian governments, and Chinese governments. This does not really sound like the Anonymous of yore. This sounds like an arm of the State Department, and that's where all their campaigns are going. Especially since the original players are all dodging indictments right now. So guess who's running the servers?
And that's probably how they got in, was through catching these guys and then exploiting them. Because if these guys are doing plea bargains, I'm sure part of the plea bargain was to open their mouth and tell them something.
Oh, yeah. That's usually, and there's an entire network of informants and snitches within the Anonymous and within the hacking community, and just like there's different niches within the hacking community. You've got the people who are into wireless hacking, you've got the people who are into web application hacking, you've got the people who are into hardware hacking, you've got the people who are into snitching and social engineering, and they usually work with they're either direct FBI informants or they're third party informants. The actual FBI agency parlance form is hip pockets, where they'll have one paid informant, and that informant will have some sources that they'll relay the information to their associate from. And there's entire networks of there's entire groups of hackers and snitches that operate like that, and they're paid for it, and they go to DEF CON, they go to all the other hacker conferences, and they're all scumbags, and they have a very, very heavy presence on AnonOps.
See, and you called this when you were on my show 2 visits ago, and because I asked you about this. And you had said, you actually, most of the time it's you calling me and saying, danger, Will Robinson, danger, red flag, must come on, must tell you some new stuff. And it dovetails what you said the last time. So I really, honestly, I hope that there's hackers out there, more white hats. I know there is. And we need you guys to step up, because I said this before, you guys are going to be what saves the internet, really. the regular general populace that knows nothing about the internet other than you turn your computer on and somehow it magically connects to it, okay, that's like at least 50% of the population. So the other percentage of the population, and I don't know what percentage of the remaining 50% is actually as computer savvy as someone like you, Winston, or some of the other listeners to the show, or your other hacker friends. But we need you guys to step up to the plate. We really do, because you guys are going to be and women. I'm not trying to be sexist when I say that. You all are going to be what saves the internet. I mean, for real. Everybody, the hackers are going to be what saves the internet via the back door, because you guys are going to be what spots this false flag coming through, and hopefully you guys can do something about it. All right, we're going to break. Final segment coming up. Do not go anywhere. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Final segment. I want to thank Winston for coming on. As always, Winston's out in the middle of nowhere, and he connects to the internet whenever he needs to, and he always takes time out of his day to log in for at least an hour and come on the show at least once a month or once every month and a half and give us his take on things and the latest news from inside the hackerverse. So again, Winston, big thank you. I want to do a little thing that we've kind of created, not really officially, but I like to call it behind the scenes, Winston's warning. And basically, I always have you, before you leave, I always have you give some sort of what to look out for, what to be on the lookout for anybody that's newer in the hacker community that might be a new listener to the show, or people that are just the listeners in general, so what they need to look out for. So with this new information, with the whole new Call of Duty trailer and everything else, what is your warning for what to look out for? What would you say?
The main things that listeners should look out for are Anonymous being used as a proxy to attack long-standing American enemies. So attacking Russia, China, and Middle Eastern nations under the guise of regime change, democracy, the standard CIA non-governmental organization proxy group reasons. Also keep an eye out for Homeland Security doing further crackdowns against the Occupy movement and using Anonymous as a tie together. Because right now there's no separation between the Anonymous, between the non-ops and the Internet Hacker Group and the Occupy movement, according to the Department of Homeland Security. In reality, they have very little to do with each other. The majority of the Occupy movement are people who just kind of support the ideals of it, have a very loose understanding of it, but definitely not hackers, and they're not hanging out on the non-ops. And that goes for pretty much all the Occupy movements nationwide. They're all just proxy fronts for the CIA, specifically the CIA Canvas program. That's one thing that people need to Google for. Occupy Wall Street and the CIA Canvas program. That's one of the models that the Occupy movement was built up off of, and that was a program that the CIA put together to create similar movements throughout the Arab Spring and create the entire Arab Spring revolution. And they brought that home and called it the Occupy movement. And they're tying the Department of Homeland Security is tying Anonymous directly to that, so that when these actual big attacks start going down, they'll have physical places to be able to raid and make a stink on the news about how these terrorist groups of cyber hackers correlate, that have exist in every city, have been pulling these attacks, and also check keep your eyes peeled on pastebin.com. So that's always a place where Anonymous leaks puts their press releases, and just continue to look for the campaigns against long-standing enemies of America, and campaigns against American infrastructure. Because chances are all of those are proxied front campaigns that are more likely created by people wearing horn-rimmed glasses in D.C. than they are by actual hackers.
So even a false flag hack attack wouldn't cover, basically, I guess I know it's an umbrella term, but there's just so many things that they're trying to hit us on now. I mean, you would think that they would be. I guess they actually have hackers working for them, don't they? They have people they've turned, or people that are just willing jerk-offs, right?
Yes, absolutely. They have many.
Do they not know what they're bringing about? Can they be that dumb?
A lot of them do know, and they're they're just bad, bad all around. A lot of them don't know. They're just stupid and patriotic, quote unquote. Yeah. A lot of them have no idea what's going on. They're just blindly following because it's through a misguided sense of patriotism. But the end game is very clear, and their agendas are openly discussed on Pastebin and IRC.
I mean, I really hope that the hackerverse can come together and, like, whatever different groups can put their everything aside and come together and realize what the ultimate goal is. Because I know that there's a lot of hackers that, again, there's people that listen to my show that are hackers, and then there's people that don't believe what what I post or what I say, and they think, oh, come on, it's a little conspiracy theorish. But it's like, look, man, it's not a theory, it's conspiracy fact. And by the way, that's something I want to say really quick. When people say, oh, it's not a conspiracy, as in trying to tell people that it's not, some crazy theory, that this really is reality, we shouldn't use that term, it's not a conspiracy, because yes, it is a conspiracy. You're fueling that misunderstanding of that word. What you should say to them is, it's not a conspiracy theory, it's conspiracy fact. And then when they look at you funny.
Or just plain conspiracy crime.
Yeah.
It is a crime. It is a crime to conspire with another individual to violate a state or federal law.
Dude, Fox News said it the other day. Megyn Kelly, their law expert, I was great. She said the term conspiracy on air in regards to the quote-unquote, five Occupy Wall Street guys that are now Homeland terrorists.
Oh, yeah.
In Ohio,
exactly.
The bombers.
She said
charged with conspiracy, Winston. And I was like, woohoo, there you go. They said it right on mainstream television that these people are being charged with conspiracy to blow up the bridge. So there you go. People need to see that and understand that it is a real word. It's not so when we
and that's a perfect example of how Homeland Security is tying in the Occupy Wall Street movement with domestic.
We got a few minutes left. Do you know anything about that?
Last I heard, 3 out of the 5 defendants were mentally ill, and the one that provided the explosives, the money for the explosives, and basically orchestrated the whole thing was an informant. So it's it's the exact it's the same formula that we're all used to. There's a really good article on motherjones.com called "The Informants," and it talks about the FBI network of informants that's been put together post 9/11, and it includes about 15,000 different informants. And
Wait,
yeah,
how many? How many informants?
15,000 official informants.
15,000 informants at least, countrywide or worldwide?
Yes, and that, countrywide, and that's just terrorism. That's not hacking. That's not drugs. That's just terrorism.
And of course, most of these informants are quote unquote controlled, and I should say quote unquote informants. They're just controlled.
A lot of them are former criminals.
End up leading these guys, like the morons, down the wrong path. And hey, you want some bombs? You want to blow up a bridge? And these guys have the mental capacity of a 4-year-old and really don't even understand what they're doing.
Right. And then that article outlines that entire way the FBI creates that network and how they've been building it since the 9/11 attacks. And there's a real good document that's linked through there that's an official FBI PDF file that talks about what they're allowed and not allowed to do in interacting with their informants. And you can see it's routinely ignored if you go through the manual.
It's like they playing like a play.
That's called The Informants on motherjones.com.
The Informants? So it's Mother Jones wrote the article. All right, go to Mother. Even though I can't stand half of the crap that they post.
Yeah, no, it's Mother Jones is your typical
controlled opposition,
liberal mainstream. Yeah, controlled opposition, but they did a good job on that article.
So it's called the Informants.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's all it's out of a playbook. It's like I've said this 100 times. This playbook's old too, and they use the same basic framework, and then they can.
Yeah, it's the new COINTELPRO basically. It's COINTELPRO version 2.0.
Yeah, for the internet.
Yeah, well, no, I was just talking about the terrorism one. But it's all the same. Yeah, it's all the same playbook.
Well, it's all linked together now. It used to be separate, but now it's all linked together because they're saying that homegrown terrorists, these anonymous quote unquote or quote unquote Occupy Wall Streeters, which they say is anonymous, which is the hacker group. That's why I love when the news says that everybody out there, at Occupy Wall Street with the anonymous masks on, are all hackers. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Really? You think all those hackers would amass in one spot? Do you think they're that stupid? Do you think all of them are that dumb to do that, first of all? No. Some of them may be hackers, but half of them are just people that are pissed off and genuinely angry about things. Some of them may be being led down the wrong road, but it doesn't matter. They are pissed off nonetheless.
Yeah, and also I want listeners to look up the CIA Canvas program, and they can see how that's being implemented locally through George Soros fronts and the Adbuster fronts to create the entire Occupy movement as a complete, State Department.
So it's called the CIA Canvas program?
Yeah.
All right. Well, Winston, we're out of time. Man, an hour always flies by when you come on, brother. Thank you for taking the time out. Ladies and gentlemen,
thanks for having me on.
Give Winston a big round of applause. Appreciate him coming on. Heed his warnings, ladies and gentlemen. He is a wise man. Make sure you heed his warnings. Hackers out there, we need your help. Need you guys to stand up to the New World Order. This stuff is real. No fear, only love, ladies and gentlemen. We will win. I'm out. Check out Joe Joseph's show next. Don't go anywhere.